All right, let's get right into this. We're about to unpack a pretty incredible high-stakes legal fight. But this isn't some clash between corporate titans. No, this is the story of one man representing himself trying to save his home by turning one overlooked moment in a courtroom into, well, a full-blown constitutional war. And that's him, Jeremy Bass. In the legal world, he's what's known as a pro se litigant. Basically, he's navigating this insane labyrinth of the law completely on his own. And for him, this isn't some abstract case file. This is everything. And talk about pressure. His entire fight, 18 months of his life, all has to be boiled down into a single 50-page document for the appeals court. There are no do-overs. This one brief is it. It's either a home run or he strikes out. On top of all that, the clock is just screaming. As he's trying to figure out his final strategy, he has less than a week to pull this whole thing together. Just 6 days to get it perfect, with his home hanging in the balance. So here's the thing you've got to understand. This is a total David and Goliath situation. You've got one guy with the folding table and some instant coffee going up against the whole polished machine of corporate law firms. And to really get this, you have to know what's driving him. For Bass, this house isn't just 4 walls and a roof. I mean, think about it. He moved 13 times before he even graduated high school. This home was his anchor. It was the proof that he'd finally broken that cycle. So he's not just fighting for a piece of property. He's fighting for who he is. You know, in every big legal fight, there's always that one moment, that one pivot point where everything changes. For Bass, it all went down in a hearing for summary judgment, and it became the absolute bedrock of his entire appeal. All right, so picture this. It's October 22nd. The stakes could not be higher. A judge is on the verge of making a call that could just end his case right then and there. So the other side's lawyer stands up and tells the judge that Bass has done nothing and just stopped paying his mortgage. But here's the kicker. That wasn't true, not even close. Bass had actually been making arrangements to pay off the entire loan. So Bass, hearing this, does what any of us would do. He tries to speak up. He tries to object. But if you look at the official court transcript, his words are just a garbled mess, totally lost and unintelligible. And the court's response? What does the judge do? Absolutely nothing. Just silence. He doesn't ask Bass to clarify what he said, doesn't even pause. That false statement just gets to hang there in the air, unchallenged, and becomes part of the official record. And this, right here, is the central question of his entire case. Was this just an awkward little moment, a clumsy interruption by some guy who doesn't know the rules, or was it something way bigger, a denial of his fundamental right to be heard, happening in real time? So now, because of that one moment, Bass is stuck. He's got that brutal 50-page limit, which means he can't argue everything. He has to pick his best shot. And he's got 2 really powerful but totally different ways he could go. Okay, so he's got 2 doors he can go through. On one hand, there's the constitutional argument about his objection being ignored. It's clean, it's simple, it's about fundamental rights. But it's also kind of theoretical, and a busy court might just wave it off. On the other hand, he has this bombshell, 14 pages of evidence he's gathered on auction fraud. It's a potential smoking gun. But, and it's a big but, it's super complex, eats up precious pages, and he runs the risk of being written off as some conspiracy theorist. What do you do? So, completely overwhelmed by this choice, he does something you'd never expect. He walks away from the legal pads and picks up a bucket of tar to go fill potholes in his old neighborhood. He actually calls it a cognitive reset. You know, the simple, repetitive, physical work, it just clears his head. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain. And in that state of productive boredom, the answer starts to take shape. And then, boom, the breakthrough. He realizes this fight has to be about something bigger than just him and his house. It's about making sure that the next person who walks into a courtroom alone, the next pro se litigant, actually gets a fair shake. So with this totally new clarity, he goes back to his desk. But now, he's not choosing between 2 arguments anymore. He's figured out how to forge them together into one single, powerful constitutional weapon. He uses this key Supreme Court test, Matthews versus Eldridge. It's actually a pretty simple balancing act. First, what's at stake for the individual? For Bass, it's his home, his life savings. It's huge. Second, what's the risk of making a mistake the way things are now? Well, it's enormous if the judge is making a decision based on a lie. And third, what would it take for the government to fix it? In this case, almost nothing. The judge just had to ask one simple question: what was your objection? Then he connects that idea to another really powerful one, the cumulative error doctrine. The thinking here is kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. One tiny error by the court might not be a big deal, but a whole pattern of them, ignoring objections, blocking evidence, they all add up to something that is fundamentally unfair. And that, right there, is unconstitutional. So he lays it all out, like a set of dominoes. And the first domino to fall? That one moment, the ignored objection. Because that objection was ignored, that completely false statement from the other lawyer gets to live on in the official record totally unchallenged. And that lie, now officially part of the record, is exactly what the judge then used to justify ruling against him and throwing out his case. And that ruling, the one based on that unchallenged lie, is what opened the door for the whole foreclosure to happen. You see the chain? One tiny ignored objection leads to a complete catastrophe. And this really brings us back to the human core of this whole thing. Bass's brief basically forces the appeals court to answer a really fundamental question. Is due process, this idea of a fair hearing, is it just a fancy phrase in a law book, or is it a real actual protection for regular people? Ultimately, this whole story leaves you with a really nagging thought. In a legal system that's so focused on efficiency and rules and being on time, who's responsible for making sure the quietest voices, the ones without the fancy lawyers, actually get heard? When justice is on the clock, whose time really counts?